Hello, and welcome to the new season, the second episode of the new season of the Cheap Seats. This is your weekly Premier League show where we discuss all things that have happened in the Premier League and some things in the sporting world. If the Super League comes back, please let it come back. I want to play some good European football. But outside of that, it is your show that discusses all things that have happened in the Premier League. I've got the full gang here today. And just before we start and do anything else, please remember to like and subscribe for more related content. Right now, live on the stream, we've got an interview with Robin Peterson, who's the coach of the Warriors, preparing us for the new domestic season in cricket. We've got rugby over the weekend. We've got so many things happening on One World Sports Radio, and the only way you can find out is if you subscribe. So if you like the show, you like the content, please do subscribe. Today, we've got a lot to talk about. We've got the gang here. We'll go through them quickly. But yeah, we're talking United, we're talking Chelsea, we're going to talk all these other clubs except for Arsenal because we know what's going on there. But let's just start off with how the guy.
Arsenal. We got to talk about Arsenal. His Excellency Paul Kagame is talking about Arsenal.
No. And we've got Wahid.
Full title. He knew Arsenal and he came running.
And he did come running. Better late than never. Welcome, Wahid. We're good. We're about to do introductions. We'll start with you. How are you doing, man?
Good. Yeah, very good. Enjoyed the weekend's games.
Okay.
Very much.
Dean, how was the Maldives?
Yeah, Maldives was great, but nothing beats beating Manchester City opening day.
Wow.
So
They're about to bring you down to size, my man. They're about to bring you down to size.
no, but it was a good game. At least Spurs. It was nice to see Spurs playing happy football. So
Did you watch in the Maldives, Dean?
No, I was already back, but I watched Arsenal Brentford, and that was actually better than Spurs beating City. Actually,
Arsenal is like on giving everyone.
I have a story. When I was on a family holiday in Mauritius, and Faf du Plessis was batting in Adelaide, and my parents reckon they wasted their money on a very nice hotel resort while I sat in the hotel room watching Faf du Plessis' heroics.
Okay, let's go through. AB, how's it going, man?
Good. Yeah, top of the log. We can end the season now.
Stop the count.
Stop the count, guys. Stop the count.
And our two Chelsea men at the top, Teppo and Cyrus. How are you guys doing?
Good.
Super.
Good. Happy.
Good. Cyrus, you guys happy? Happy that Lukaku's back in the Premier League?
Ooh. I don't know who isn't.
me.
The rest of us are not. Well, me, because I'm going to see him on Sunday. Okay.
I'm pretty sure Timo Werner's not happy. But...
Yeah, he's the other guy. Okay, so Wahid and AB, our first topic of the day. This is you. Is it title or bust for Manchester United? This probably is the best squad you guys have assembled since Alex Ferguson. You guys even had the balls to unveil Rafael Varane in front of an 80,000 Old Trafford, just like, because, hey, we're back in it. This is our confidence. But if you guys do not get the title, how will you feel?
I think that's very premature to be saying that. I don't even think we have the third. I think we have the third best squad in England. To be perfectly honest, if you look at options, City have two full sides that can win the league. They have a first team that can win the league, and they have a second team that can win the league.
But they can't
beat Spurs though.
Man United's second team cannot win the league. Man United's second team is not that great. It's okay. It's fine for squad rotation, that sort of thing, but it's very premature talk. Chelsea's squad is better than United's at the moment. Yes, we've done well. We've gotten two extremely good players in. Potentially both need time to settle into their squad role. So we can't. I don't think it's a case of Robin van Persie coming in and firing United to a Premier League title. I don't think it's going to be like that, but I think it's going to be two very important cogs in making United get to a point where we can challenge for the title. So whether it's this season, I think United can challenge for the title this season. let's not get that wrong. But I think that many players would have to have the season of their lives for us to go on and win the title.
AB, let me ask you this. You guys finished second last year. You got the guy you've always wanted, Jadon Sancho. You got a bargain in Rafael Varane, which makes your team a little bit deeper and a little bit stronger in the areas, because you guys were last season complained about Lindelof like crazy. Surely that would say that it has to be the title.
So I wouldn't. So I was thinking to myself before, like, how do you measure progress? And for a team who finished second, the only way for them to improve, some might argue, is by winning the title. And I disagree with that. So I looked at some numbers and I saw United conceded 44 goals last season. Previous season, they conceded 36. And a big problem with United last season was they lost all 6 of their games at home. So I think first things first is United need to shore up that defense. They didn't do it well at Leeds, but to be fair, that was a great goal from Ayling. No keeper would have stopped that. You could argue that the midfield should have closed them down for the shot, but it is what it is. United also dropped points in 8 games against the so-called big clubs, the Liverpools, the Arsenals, the Spurs, the Cities. So I think Chelsea's. So I think for United, for this United team, the second place United team, to consider a successful season, one, they need to concede less than 38 goals a season, so this season. So we're already on average with that. 2, they need to drop less points at home, so try not to lose at home. And then 3, you need to take points away from those bigger teams around you, because that's the only way you're going to start challenging for that first place, is by following those 3 steps. Whether or not that translates to winning a league is very difficult, because City and Chelsea have such incredible squads. It's going to be very, very difficult.
Wahid, what makes you optimistic about this side?
I think the youth, the vibrancy, they're playing a brand of football that's enjoyable to watch. They're a bunch of lads that are likable. Over
Except
the last few years,
Pogba, by the way, right?
Yeah, bunch of lads.
Over the last couple of years, I'm not going to lie. There's been characters in the United squad who I've struggled to like, who haven't like, it hasn't been screaming that this is a Manchester United player, and we've had the likes of Di Maria and Rojo and Falcao in the side, and they just didn't scream Man United. Whereas right now, I think generally the players we have seem like Man United players, seem like they belong at the club. And I think there's been a cultural reset. And I think that certain players have played their role in that cultural reset. And I think Harry Maguire was one very important one. And I've read very good articles about how Dan James is one of the very, very important players within that cultural reset at the team, where there are flair players like Greenwood, like Sancho, like Mason Greenwood, but there's this hard-working lad, Daniel James, who the manager looks at and he sets out a benchmark saying that, listen guys, you know what, if you're not going to work hard, if you don't maintain the standards of Manchester United, this young lad is, and we'll play him when we need to. So I think there's been important players being brought in, and I think that the team is moving forward and I think that generally anybody who watches with 2 eyes at the moment will see that Man United have progressed under Ole. And I think that there's a bunch of Ole outers, but they have their own agenda, and they're probably anti-vaxxers too. So
I'm an Ole guy. I think there's a point where Ole's at the wheel and the wheel will somehow come off. But I won't lie, Saturday looked a lot scary. Cyrus, when you look at this United side, are you scared, or do the other teams around them, should they be scared because they're better?
And Paul, I love that you came to me, because I always have a lot of stuff to say. Let's start with United came second last season. Yes, they did come second last season. They were also 12 points behind City at, when it all came down to it. And to AB's point about, what makes it a better season for them, coming second and the gap being 3 points would be a good win, in terms of an improvement. But then that should be getting to City's level, as opposed to City being worse than they were last season. I think, though, that this United team have got a lot of really, really important players as a part of it now. I don't know if I fear Jadon Sancho, because I think he's a really good player. But when I think about his skill set in particular, it isn't necessarily the kind of thing that really harries. He's a bit like a I don't want to say flashier, but a stockier Jack Grealish, because he's got a lot of skill. He manages to get past a lot of players, and he's got an eye for a good pass. But apart from those things, it's not as if he's Eden Hazard who's killing defenses left, right, and center. Perhaps that's what we'll see when we see United in full flow. But the other thing for me is the central thing is what Wahid was talking about was the defense. Signing Varane has got to be one of the coups of this season. He is one of the most sought after centre backs in world football. Him next to Harry Maguire should be your new Rio Ferdinand and Nemanja Vidic, because they complement each other in that way. Varane being a ball-playing centre-back, Harry Maguire being a massive head with some legs. And so I think but it works. It's just that when you look at some of the other parts, and this is also to Wahid's point, as a squad, there are not enough game breakers that can come off the bench in order to kill you. And I think that's one of the key things here. So, for instance, if you're able to nullify the likes of Bruno Fernandes or Paul Pogba, you then start to wonder as to where the creativity will come from. I'm not saying that Chelsea in particular will be the ones who will then be like, okay, get off the bench, Hakim Ziyech, Timo Werner. I mean, there are names and names. You then look at somebody like City, and they've got the likes of Ferran Torres. They've got the likes of Jack Grealish.
Raheem Sterling, even though you don't like him.
Sterling. But this was actually going to be my point. I fear the likes of Raheem Sterling a little more than I do Jadon Sancho, not because Jadon Sancho's bad, but because Raheem Sterling's pace is something you cannot replicate. You either have the pace to get behind defenses or you don't. Daniel James has that pace, but then he is even less of a footballer than Raheem Sterling is. And I said a heck of a lot about how I view Daniel James, even though he's killed Chelsea before. Let me not forget that. But that's just my feeling anyway.
Okay. Tempo, I want you to touch on the other title contenders. We've spoken about United. You can talk about United, but where do you... Because the guys here at the bottom are telling us that, no, this is the third best squad in the league. So who's winning this thing?
Yo, who's winning this thing? I don't even know who's winning the next game. There are just so many title contenders here. We haven't even spoken about Liverpool, guys. Liverpool with Firmino coming off the bench. What? And the trio are working hot fire. Virgil van Dijk is back. Guys, the season is going to be hot. And what I love about the beginning of the Premier League, we saw it in our fantasy leagues, goals galore. Everyone's going to be scoring goals, but there's going to come a point when things are going to start drying up, when the depth in squad is actually going to start counting in. And I mean, it's literally about the depth of your squad. If you don't have squad depth, you won't be able to compete in multiple competitions. And I don't know, I think Manchester United are on their way to winning a title, but it's not the Premier League. You guys need to win like Europa or something, like they fell at the final, if they won there, it would have been a different story. Oh, here we go, but like they fell at the final, scoring some people, they want to win something. So I don't think the Premier League, they need to focus on cups for now. And then they can come to the big boys table a little bit later.
Who's sitting at that big boys table?
I love it.
People that have won Champions League or have been to a Champions League final are sitting.
They've won the Champions League before.
No.
I've been to a Champions League final as well, so that means I'm at the table.
Touche.
I love how the fan of a team who came third is talking to the fans of a team who came second.
Yeah, but second is as good as third.
Hello.
Second is good as third. I mean, you didn't get a medal.
Big boys table.
No.
We're just impressed that these Chelsea fans have come back after the summer, still Chelsea fans, and haven't switched to City yet.
Well, I guess, some of us who've made good decisions can actually still change our minds about things, as opposed to guys who've digged themselves into graves and continue to hate their own players. But enough
Okay.
about that, though.
Okay, let's talk about Manchester City. We're going to come to Chelsea, but let's talk about Manchester City. Dean, when you arrived in South Africa,
Dean, don't worry
in
about
your
it.
house, watching your starting lineup without Harry Kane, when you looked at that City side, that starting 11, it looked formidable. Is there a problem? Was like when you watched the game, was there something you were like, Pep's got this all wrong?
Big problem for City's left back. If you look at that, Spurs only attacked down the right-hand side, and that's because Tanganga played the game of his life, obviously. But
yes,
City,
star of all or nothing,
yeah.
Jaffet Tanganga. He's the
Tanganga
only guy
played
from
unreal.
Spurs that I will root for.
Yeah. So I think City's okay. They played Mendy, and obviously I think Zinchenko's would be their starting their left back. But Mendy on that field just runs way too far up. Thinks he can try and convince Pep to be the new striker of City, and then they just leave gaps. And that's where I think if teams want to exploit and Mendy's on that field, you can go on that left side. But you look at that City side, and no one sitting here can say that they're not afraid of a City team. They've got the depth, they've got the players. They go sign Jack Grealish. They want Jack Grealish, they go sign him 100 million. Cool. They
want Harry
come in
Kane
for
and they pay
Kane.
150.
Yeah, well, we'll get to the Kane story because I have my own opinions on what going to happen with Kane.
Okay.
But City can go out and beat anyone they want to. But at the same time, you can still see that there are frailties. Losing to Leicester in the Shield, in the Community Shield, fine, it's just a Community Shield, but you still lose. And it's a game you would expect them to win. Same against Spurs. They looked like, for Spurs to look like a fitter team against City, either means Nuno has taken the same group of players and turned them into, they were probably watching the Olympics and decided to all become track athletes, or, Pep's kind of got frailties in that team, and it's clear to see. I think that left side was definitely a problem, and they are crying out for a striker, but you feel sorry for Jesus. He's the only striker there, and he's not getting game time. And obviously on their bench, having people like KDB sitting on your bench, he's not going to sit bench for the rest of the season. So it was a weaker team, so there's no doubt about that. But I do still think City, they did the same thing last season. They had that little bit of a slump, and then look at what they do.
Ooh, big power there. Big flex from Wahid. I'm going to come to you, Wahid. AB, is Pep overthinking it? Or were they just not prepared because all their players were playing all around the world and they just never arrived?
Well, I don't know. It's Pep. No one knows what's going on in this oak's head. It's like he's like a spoiled child who knows what he wants, is crying out for what he wants, doesn't get it because, his parents have bought him everything else in the world, and they just, there's some factors here that the parents can't control. And now he's throwing his toys out the cot and is just... City should not be losing to a Spurs team like that without Harry Kane, But yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what's going on in Pep's mind. No one does. They had a bad start last season. They're having a bad start again. But they should be back. Whether or not they'll have Kane is another story. But yeah, all credit to Spurs. They played a great game. Jaffet played brilliantly. Mendy was horrible. Yeah. It is the way. It is what it is.
Wahid, if you looked at that City side in last season, the way they played, they got to mid-October, early November, and they just shut up shop defensively. They were just very stout and they were very good. Do you see that happening again this season? Do you think with all the goals going around, especially with a top four, because I consider Liverpool, Chelsea, United, and City as my title contenders. That's the big boys table. Do you think, because those teams have improved, do you think they will find it a lot harder this season to have that run again?
Yeah, so I was gonna mention that there was that period. I think in December, United went top, and then City lost De Bruyne, and Gundogan started playing number 10, and he scored a bucket load of goals, and they went on that long unbeaten run when they pretty much put the title to bed during that period. They went on again, I think it was, I can't remember how many unbeaten games, and then they came up against United, and United beat them. And that was the point I wanted to make, is that the way Spurs played this weekend was very, very similar to the way United played in that game when we beat them. And there's almost a blueprint to beat Manchester City. There's definitely a blueprint, because I think teams are studying, and apparently who did they play in the Champions League? Leon studied the way United beat them a couple of seasons ago, and there's definitely a blueprint to it. City, I think Pep has this idea of how football should be played in his own mind, and he doesn't like to deviate from it. He believes in a one system way, and he doesn't like changing from it. And there's definitely a way. If you let them come at you, and you have fast enough players, you can definitely pick them off. There's no doubt about that. Mendy is a terrible footballer. He is shocking. He's really not a good footballer. He's got, honestly, I can't fully describe how bad this footballer is. So I can't imagine that he's going to be playing many games. I imagine Zinchenko is going to be going back there, and in the event that Zinchenko can't play, I suspect Laporte or Ake might actually switch out to left back, because if Pep watched that game with two eyes, then I can't imagine Mendy's going to play many more games.
Cyrus, what was Nathan Ake doing on the field on Sunday? When I saw that, I was like, is this man trying?
I would tell you if I knew.
In the Community Shield, it didn't do well. And you're like, okay, but dude.
I think that, let me just also backtrack a little bit. I think, interestingly, Wahid made a very good point about if you've got enough pace, you can get at City. Though I do think City's biggest issue is that they don't have defenders. Zinchenko is not a defender. And you remember in the Champions League final, that's exactly who the goal came from when Chelsea scored to win the game. So the thing with them is that what they have is attacking fullbacks, right? We all understand that's exactly what they try to do, is have these guys who just bomb upfield. The City's biggest issue is that they don't have Fernandinho at the peak of his powers. What they need is somebody who mops up all of the absolute dross that happens, and then they can attack from there. Now, to go to the Nathan Ake thing, I think that sometimes what happens when you've got big squads like Cities, you've got a lot of guys trying to stake a claim for a space and a permanent place in that starting lineup. If you remember, John Stones was nowhere near the starting lineup for a huge amount of time at City, and then suddenly he was flavor of the month. Next thing, he's back in everyone's good graces, and then he starts for England. So Ake probably has a similar mindset, that the better he does, the more time he'll get. But the thing is, sometimes when you try too hard, you end up failing. And I think that's generally what seems to have happened with him a little bit. He's a fantastic footballer, needless to say, because he came with the Chelsea Academy. But the other thing being, it's the beginning of the Chelsea Academy.
You guys have given every single team in this Premier League a defender this season. You gave Crystal Palace,
come from the Chelsea
Southampton.
Academy, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. That academy, though we speak highly of it, the owner has pumped £1 billion into it, so they better produce stuff. But the other thing being that when you look at players like Ake, they are good squad players. They can actually definitely do a job for you. But I don't think the guys that Pep is going to rely on. And when you look at how teams are still playing friendlies midweek now, they clearly don't have enough games in their legs. So this is Pep's way of saying, okay, fine, if we're going to do this first, let it happen as the first game of the season, but let's not make it be the one that is really crucial come the middle of the season. And I think that's the thinking behind it.
Okay, Cyrus, Chelsea signed Lukaku, right? What are your team's ambitions now? Is this a title-winning team as Chelsea with the addition of Lukaku? As I asked for the United guys, you've won the Champions League, so now you're at the big boys table, as Teppo says, and I'll go to Teppo after this. But does Lukaku then turn you into the hunted instead of the hunter?
I think this is always City's league to win or lose because of the resources that they have and because of the squad depth that they have and also the players that they have. I mean, Kevin De Bruyne didn't just leave City. You know, he's still there. He's going to be one of the most influential players. I do think Lukaku is potentially the key to getting Chelsea to a much greater level, but also to correct Wahid, and it seems like I'm going after Wahid here. He said we came third. We were so bad we came fourth, Wahid. So, you know, it's trying to improve is definitely something we have to work on here. And I think that Lukaku's goals could potentially lift us there, but there has to be more coming from the rest of that squad. because I don't think that the league is ever won by just having a striker who bags in the goals, because that means you've got one focal point. Chelsea don't have enough goal-scoring midfielders or wingers. Pulisic managed to get a goal this weekend, but he hasn't been getting enough goals. You look at, like, our top goal scorer last season was Jorginho.
Penalties. What it is.
Chelsea's title-winning teams in the past have often been laid down by midfielders who've also gotten goals. Your likes of Eden Hazard, he was a forward, but he weighed in with a heck of a lot of goals. So where are those other goals coming from? Because I don't see Mason Mount, Kovacic, Jorginho, other than penalties, scoring enough goals to lay the foundation. It just isn't that. If anything, they might come from the likes of Pulisic, Ziyech, and Havertz, and those guys could be the ones who bring the goals forward. But they didn't do it last season, and we're hoping that improvement starts now. I see Tsepo talking into the mic there, waiting for his turn, but that's the way I feel about it.
So I think something that's very important about Lukaku is that he's going to take a lot of pressure off like the rest of the team. And everyone scored goals. The thing is, like, literally everyone scored goals. I think of it like playing fantasy. You never knew who was going to score for Chelsea, but you knew that Chelsea was going to score one goal. Maybe it was going to be Alonso. Maybe it was going to be Azpilicueta. Maybe it was going to be there are tons of it could literally be anyone. So there are tons of like role players, and I think all that Chelsea needed or needs is a focal point. Like, and the thing about Lukaku, guys, let's not like. This guy is no scrub. This guy is a complete striker at the peak of his performance. This guy is fast. He can get on behind. He can hold up the ball. He can turn in on goal. Like, he's a complete striker. And I mean, that could take a lot of pressure off Timo Werner. Imagine Timo Werner, no pressure, bang in goals. Because he's always at the right place at the right time. But just the confidence.
And he makes goals. He makes goals for a lot of guys.
So I think
just that shot conversion, that goal conversion that we have a problem with.
But if you've got him playing off the left, it takes away the pressure from him having to be the one who's centrally doing stuff. But Tsepo, let's be totally honest here. As much as we have guys who can score goals, they didn't score enough goals. And that's why we ended the season fourth in the league. This is also the most important aspect here, is that if we'd gotten the goals that we needed from Pulisic, from Ziyech, from Havertz, from Mount, any one of them, we wouldn't be here saying, yes, we definitely need Lukaku. All of the misses weren't just Timo Werner. He just happened to be in the best spaces then. But then what happened to the other guys? And we're not even necessarily creating as many opportunities. I don't like to look into the XGs and all of that absolute nonsense. I want to see what I'm seeing on the pitch. And these guys are not doing enough on the pitch.
I also couldn't give two shits about XG.
Okay.
I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Okay, look, Brighton fans are dying on XG because they would have won the league on XG. AB.
It's like saying, guys, on Duck with Lewis, we'd win right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey,
exactly.
don't miss
saying, guys.
Win probability.
Oh yeah, that thing's now new in the Premier League. I'm still awkward with it. AB, you saw Lukaku in red, similar with Raheem. You know, what do you make of this signing? He's back. Is he gonna come back and punish you?
I'm so jealous.
Lukaku in red.
Wow. Look, I'm really jealous. I love Rom. I think he's probably one of the top 5 strikers in the world. On his day, he can tear up any team. We saw that in that PSG game where his work rate was unbelievable. That was in the Oli days. I think Chelsea are really going to be a force this season. While they didn't score goals last season, and I think they scored like 58 goals. They were like, I think Leeds scored more goals than Chelsea last season. Let's just put it that way. So it just goes to show how Chelsea...
58 goals, conceded 36. Leeds
but 36,
had
that's
2 goals.
But that's the thing. Chelsea conceded the second least amount of goals in a season. And the only thing stopping Chelsea from top 2, because I predicted them top 2 last year, was the inconsistency. Chelsea were horribly inconsistent, but they showed in the Champions League that on their day, they can be the best team in Europe. So it's going to be a very exciting season if you're a Chelsea fan. When Rom comes in, he'll probably start against Arsenal because it's a very easy game for him to go and score a couple easy goals. Yeah.
I'm not
It's
fighting
true,
you
though.
there.
It's true.
Yeah. So look,
I'm not
it's just
fighting
can Chelsea get that consistency? Maybe it'll come by taking the pressure off the Havertz, the Werners, the ZX. Mason Mount is always going to perform because Mason Mount performs. That's what he does. So it's worrying times if you're not a Chelsea fan. That's what I think. I'm scared.
Dean, is it worrying times if you're not a Chelsea fan because they signed Lukaku?
I think, look, there's no one's going to sit here and say Lukaku is not a good signing, right? But as we were talking about squad depth and coverage, I think Chelsea there is a clearer distinction between their starting 11 and their second 11. So I think if you look at that defense, you look at the weekend, you probably think, okay, Thiago Silva comes in for that Chalobah, but then you try and fit all those names on the same field, and I don't think you can without leaving one of the bigger players out. So obviously Kante is going to come in, but then do you start looking at leaving Mount and Pulisic off for Havertz and Lukaku, or how's this little puzzle piece going to come together? So it's obviously like Azpilicueta, and they've got the whole Reece James, and then you've got Chilwell on the other side, but it's more a case of how is Tuchel going to fit all these puzzle pieces together, first of all, without leaving one of what we would consider a A-team squad player or an A-team player. So he can't leave Havertz on the bench forever. He can't leave, Mount he did wonders last season. You can't leave someone like that on the bench for the rest of the season. So I think as much as City have a second team which can come off the bench and play in the position, Chelsea have the same, but to a lesser extent, and you have to manage that like sort of man management there of, are you going to be happy with leaving one or two stars on the bench every single time, or is it just going to be constant changes every single week that like we see? So I think that's probably the biggest issue facing Chelsea. But on the Lukaku comment, he starts, he scores, and he's probably the top signing that they made.
He's going to bully Ben White over the weekend, and it's going to be sad.
Your Arsenal supporters, those foreign sites. No, the giant team it's hurting me.
Wait, on this Lukaku comment, let's close it off.
One thing, so there's two things here. Dean mentioned earlier that Spurs look fitter under Nuno,
yes, because we do.
They do, and I want to take you back to United a few seasons ago when we see these photos of admittedly a really fat Romelu Lukaku, and
he was big. He wasn't fat.
You mean Mark Henry?
He came back a little bit overweight. I watched games where he really struggled to get going. Now, this is not an attack on Rom. This is an attack on Mourinho. Mourinho at some point got rid of
let's attack Mourinho.
A bunch of sports scientists at United and decided that he didn't need sports scientists to determine diet, to determine fitness levels, etc., and he could do it with his eyes. And evidently that failed. Rom wasn't fit at the end of his United career.
No,
he
was
was
sure.
No was not sure. He was huffing. He was puffing. He was not doing himself any justice. Was that blame at his door? Maybe. Was it at Mourinho's? Potentially. And Dean brought that point up. That was just a side thing. One thing I wanted to mention is that everybody's talked about Lukaku as this player who's going to lead the line for Chelsea. And just something I've noticed is that he's actually not that target man that many think he is. He's not. If you're expecting the second coming of Didier Drogba, you are going to be disappointed. He's not that. Rom really excels when he's starting in the central channel, pulling out to the right, pulling a defender out of place, and then making a run in behind. He's not really a target man. He's more of a player to make a run in behind the defense. If you treat him like a target man, it's when he's going to fail. He played really well at Inter in a partnership up front with Lautaro Martinez, and it was a partnership up front. When one pulled left, the other one came central. When one pulled right, the other one came central. So it's very much a work in progress. If you're expecting Rom to be a big number 9 who's going to score bucket loads of headers, you're going to be disappointed. He's not that.
Maybe it's time for Tuchel to play a 3-5-2, Cyrus.
But Tuchel did say in his press conference that he's thinking about potentially even moving to have 2 strikers up front rather than playing with the three forwards as he currently has them. And Lukaku played in a 3 at United, though with relative success, because the guys who were there with him went. I mean, you know my feelings about everybody's favorite Marcus Rashford, but I just think that to Wahid's point, though he loves him so dearly, I think Lukaku really is the kind of striker who is far more technically gifted at looking at the game. He's not necessarily the most skillful, but he plays with other players better than just trying to lead the line. And I dare say everybody expects Didier Drogba. Drogba became that. Drogba actually fancied himself as a bit of a Thierry Henry when he came to Chelsea, and then, was utilized more as a battering ram. I think Chelsea fans are expecting to see Diego Costa, who just absolutely bullied everybody and then banged in goals. And Lukaku is not that either. Lukaku will bring a lot of other players in.
Cry about every night.
Oh, Diego Costa, an absolute nutcase, but the man could play football. I think he's going to have some serious problems in Brazil when he goes home.
There's going to be a lot of fights in Brazil. Okay, last topic for this segment of the show. Dean, no Kane, no problem. It's all Son. It's always been Son. You guys have just undervalued Son. Can you sustain this level of performance for 38 games without Harry Kane?
No. No. But what my point of view on the Kane situation is, I think what my ideal situation would be is we don't sell him, obviously, because exactly that. We're not going to have Son's not going to be able to pull that performance with Lucas and Stevie on the other side every single week. There's no ways. You don't get rid of the best striker in the league and then all of a sudden still go ahead and carry on winning games. So there's no one's under any kind of pretenses there. The biggest issue that I think is Spurs need to sort out the other areas of the team this season, because we fine on attack. We've got Son, we've got Kane, we've got Lucas is getting old, but our sort of attacking side is okay. The biggest issue with Spurs is that midfield and defense, and that's where we need to strengthen. And if we can at least delay the selling of Kane, because it will happen, it might happen next season, but at least if we can keep that solidified and work on the defense. So we've signed Christian Romero. The old Fabrizio Romano says we're going after a midfield and a defender, so it must be true. And we're looking at some Fiorentina people, and there's definitely things happening. So
Italy
I would prefer to not sell
Milan.
Yeah. So I don't think we sell Kane. Ideally, we don't sell Kane. But the one thing I will say is a lot of Spurs supporters have lost a lot of respect for Kane. I think the whole not coming for training thing is a big issue. He's still yet to say anything about the game on Sunday on social media, Twitter, Instagram. So he's busy promoting some wireless charging rubbish on your cell phone yesterday, and he hasn't come out and said, congrats to the lads, whatever. So
what they can say, congrats to the lads for beating the team I'm going to.
Well,
you can't say
he should at least come out and say something, as
He's stuck there, Dean. He's stuck. He's like, look,
No.
I'm going to. We know this.
But
I can't be like.
But here's my thing, right?
upset.
But people are saying, okay, cool. Kane should leave. Spurs should let him go. Just let the man go. He doesn't want to be there. Screw that. I'm sorry. We've got the asset. Come and get him. We've got 3 years on the contract.
Score 0 goals because he's not. Put him in that starting lineup. You will see.
Then I'm sorry. I don't have any issue if any team had an asset for 3 years, a 3-year contract. No one in their right mind says, "Oh, yeah, actually, we'll sell you." Gentleman's agreement means nothing. No one even knows what was in this gentleman's agreement. For all, he's making it up. So we're basically saying, okay, cool. Yeah, we've got the supply. You want it? Come, offer us 150 mil, and then we'll think about it. If not, cool. We'll carry on. We'll beat you in the next game. You know what I'm saying?
I'm with Dean on this. I'm with Dean on this.
100%. So I don't think there's any issue.
Yeah, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to say, guys, sell this man. Get the money. Sell this man. Get the money. Fix your team. Sell this man. You guys, this guy's a penny pincher. Dan Levy doesn't like selling people. And I guess the only problem is that he can't go to a Premier League team. But where else is he going to go? Where else is he going to go to win trophies? It's just not like... Like, as much as Harry Kane is an asset, he's a man. Come on, he's so good, bruh. All the years that he gave your team, just let him win a
I'm
trophy.
sorry. If
You
you
know it's not
if
going to be
sign
bad.
Lukaku
Let him go.
and then next season
Let
someone
him
comes and
go.
says 150
Bro.
mil, are you going to be like, yo, I actually care a lot about Rom's feelings,
150
and he
mil.
wants to leave, so let me go.
For-
Not a
No.
chance.
This is a
Not
big
a
picture.
chance.
It could help your team. Your team has a lot of gaps. You said it yourself. Why not get money to fill those gaps? Liverpool did it with Coutinho. Why don't you do it
Hundreds.
with Kane?
Because we can do it next
Maybe-
season, because there's still 2
maybe-
years left on the contract. That's
On a
what
Manchester United perspective, you kind of had a bit of a similar problem, because if Harry Kane's not saying anything, then the person who might be saying all of these things, leaking these things out, is his agent. There's a virus that Wahid likes to call at Manchester United. Is it similar or is it different because it's Harry Kane?
No, it's
I
similar.
mean,
Very similar.
I mean, to be fair, our virus shows up. Our virus trains. Our virus is active on social media. He performs in the games. Look, for the record, I want Kane to go to City. I want him to go now, ASAP, because next season Erling Haaland's gonna get itchy feet, and I do not want City to sign him. Haaland needs to come home to his Norwegian second father.
to Leeds.
He's not coming to England.
No. Yeah, I mean, look, Haaland would be stupid to come to England because Lewandowski's going to retire and all that. But I mean, I want the chance.
It's Bayern or Real. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wahid, what about the team dynamics at Spurs, having a guy like Harry Kane who doesn't want to be there? He hasn't said anything about the win on Sunday. Would adding him into the squad be negative? Would he not give? He'll give like 90% because he's a professional, but he's not gonna go chase down lost causes anymore. Is it fair to add a guy like that when Son looks fine as the number 9?
Yeah, I'm assuming we all read The Athletic now. I read the other day that,
yeah, we know.
that basically within the squad, they've all accepted at the end of the last season that Kane was gone. They've all made their peace with it. They reluctantly accepted his reasons and they accepted his vision for his own career and sort of said, well, goodbye and good luck. And he's not Kane's biggest problem is his golden handcuffs. If he envisaged getting to this point, he shouldn't have signed a contract. That's how it goes. If you want your future's in your own hands, don't sign. So Paul Pogba, I have well-documented issues with Paul Pogba. But all he's done is he's gone, right, I'm not tying myself to these golden handcuffs. I want to see where this club is going. And you know what? As much as I do have reservations about that, from a player perspective, I understand it. Paul Pogba was sold a dream by Ed Woodward that didn't materialize. It didn't. It did not materialize. He's played through some really hard times at Man United under some iffy bosses because Mourinho probably wasn't the best person to work with Paul Pogba. So what he's done is he's gone, right, I'm going to see where this club is going. Right now, the talk is that he's seeing how Varane and Sancho do in the next 6 months before committing his future to this club. Kane should probably have done the same thing. He's unfortunately gone and put himself in some golden handcuffs, and he's tied his own personal future to another man. So Daniel Levy now decides his future instead of him and his agent. So that's probably Kane's problem. He's gone and tied himself into something he shouldn't have.
But to your point, because I think that's fantastic. I do think, though, what's intriguing here is Levy has basically played this tactically incredibly, because the reality is he cannot lose in this situation now, right? He's got Kane, who's there at the club. He's got this contract. He has to abide by it because them's are the rules. But the other thing is he's also had a gentleman's agreement or some sort of understanding that he's supposed to let Kane go. And at what cost? It's because in this gentleman's agreement, it's not like you're out there saying, okay, Harry, look, if they come in with 110 mil, then we'll do it. Those things are never stipulated within that. They say if City come with a reasonable offer, then we'll accept that. And I think this also could work to Spurs' detriment as well. I liked the signing of Nuno as their new coach. Because I think Nuno would do the right things first, which is shore up the defense, make sure they're hard to break down, and then start working your way forwards. If you have Harry Kane in that, Harry Kane becomes your, dare I say it, Jimenez, who then becomes this guy who scores all the goals, and then Nuno's system works again. But the other thing here is, if you sell Harry Kane, you cannot be in the same position. And that's why I think you've got the new director of football at Spurs, because they've had big money signings in the past, your Gareth Bales, and they absolutely pissed that money away and spent it on all sorts of, oh God, let me not even mention some of the
Hey,
names.
it's Lamela. Don't tune Lamela.
Oh God. I mean, okay, he scored this weekend, and that's really great. But that
scored two.
He did nothing for you guys.
Irikish.
Yeah, he was basically the I almost said something that might have gotten some of my chief supporting friends.
Say it. It's fine. It's okay. I support Arsenal. Chiefs. Just give it.
The thing is, a flashy accessory rather than somebody who does enough for you going forward, right? Dabupule was a great player, but he was more playing to the crowd than he was banging in goals or creating enough.
That's why we supported guys and Chiefs.
That's my point. This is also the dreams that Arsenal used to sell guys. You can play fantastic football, but also win games. And that was the thing. Now there seems to be a, what do you want? You want end product. And Spurs have got a director of football who looks as if he's looking for the people who would give you end product. No more Vincent Janssens. Please. If you do that, you might as well just become Newcastle.
I forgot they signed that dude. Okay, that brings us to the end of the show. We've spoken about a lot of things, but hold on. We've got the FPL segment where he's going to tell us what happened, and Pep is probably going to boast.
So I'm going. Goodbye.
Okay, so on the other side of this, we've got FPL discussion.